Good morning and welcome to this Wednesday, July 20th version of Keystroke Live. My name's David Hunsinger, and today I'm going to be talking about PCI and EMV. Just remember, with Keystroke Live Wednesday, same login information, same time. Michael Gebb on the first Wednesday of every month, except August. We are going to be taking that one off and probably doing a recap of the Dealer Summit and Retail Now show on, I believe it's the 10th of August. And before I go any further with the presentation, I want to show you this is the hopefully it pops up pretty quick here, the PCI Security Standards website. I know it's probably kind of small to see. Oh, this is where I wanted to be. See if that changes the view there. But this is the validated payment applications list on the PCA website and the validation for Keystroke POS as of July 13th, 2017. So we are officially PA-DSS approved by the PCI SSC. The other website, I'm going to switch to this tab I was on first here, is the QIR website, and this is just the listing for me as a approved QIR by the PCI SSC. So just some things to see that are there, and so we've worked long and hard on that approval and are very pleased to have it finally official. And so that just kind of ties in a little bit what I'm talking about today with EMV and PCI. And so a little bit about EMV. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about everything, but try to give you an idea of what it's about. It's Europay, MasterCard, Visa. It's run by EMV Co., which is an organization here in the U.S. that is controlled by the major card brands, or card issuers, they call those guys too. Or I'm sorry, card brands. Card issuers are the banks and all. When it was developed about in the 90s, 15, 20 years ago, it was developed for two key benefits. One is authentication via the chip on the card and PIN entry, and two is the ability for offline transactions. Funny how those were the two major reasons it was developed, and those are two things we're basically not using here in the U.S. So PCI is the Payment Card Industry Security Standard Council, so they have the security standards, the DSS, Data Security Standards, and it's basically set up there for standards for security organizations for those major, the card brands, Visa, MasterCard, Discover. So it is a security standard. The PA-DSS, Payment Application Data Security Standard, that's what applies to Keystroke. It used to be known as PABA when it was under Visa and MasterCard, but then they created the PCI SSC, the Security Code Council, to administrate the standard. Now, that remember, it's there to provide a definitive data standard for software vendors like me. The council is there to administrate it. They don't enforce it, they don't regulate it, they don't issue fines, they administrate the standard. And here is the PCI DSS. It's proprietary information. It's mandated by the card brands and administered by the council, and it was created to increase controls and reduce credit card fraud. Good ideas in mind. How is it working? We can argue that a little bit. So now I want to talk about PCI and EMV together. PCI is really about card security. EMV is about card authentication. So EMV, when I'm taking somebody's credit card, and here I've got a EMV credit card. You see this one, it doesn't even have numbers on the front of it. It's just got my name and the chip on it. So what EMV allows is when I dip this or insert it into the EMV device, that is authenticating that this is really my card. Now, the ultimate way to do that, obviously, is I have this card, this chip, and I put my PIN in the device. But unfortunately, the U.S. decided not to use PINs. They are using signature, which nobody really looks at anyway, so it doesn't really add any security. But this, all that does is say, hey, this is David Hunsinger's card, and it's really David Hunsinger. Remember, the chip is just, it runs a little application or two, like a debit card. Really has two applications on the chip, one for debit and one for the card brand, so that you can use it like a Visa card. So when you're doing it as debit or doing it as Visa, a different app runs on the chip. And why else is the app there? That's for the offline transactions, so that you can say, hey, this card's good for $1,000. So I could go buy $1,000 worth of stuff without the merchants checking the internet, and it would save that and deduct it on the chip itself. The US networks are not set up to do that, so we don't utilize that functionality of the chip. They both kind of work together to protect the cardholder, the merchant, and the data, of course, but they are independent of each other. If you go through the PCI documentation and stuff, you'll never see talk of EMV in there. So it's kind of, they are two different things. EMV is about authentication. PCI is worried about security, data transmission, data storage. Now, one of the interesting things about the EMV is it's really introduced this whole new area of fraud, and I think they've called it friendly fraud. That's people realize, oh, well, if I use my chip card and the store I'm at doesn't have a chip reader, I can dispute it and get my money back every time. And so that's getting to be an issue and a problem, and there's pressure on the organizations to change how they're doing it a little bit. The card brands thought it would be a good idea because that would force everybody into the EMV, but it's really created this whole new type of fraud that they are kind of trying to keep on the down low and quiet, because they don't, it's hard to find like, oh, here's the total number of dollars they think are falling to friendly fraud, but they are trying not to publicize it too much because it's kind of a negative thing about the EMV. Part of the PA-DSS are the implementation guides. So this, we're getting past EMV, but it kind of ties in because there are basically, if you're a Keystroke installer and reseller, there are 3 different implementation guides that you follow. Now, these are mandated by PA-DSS, and a big part of what we did in our PA-DSS validation was create this 20-page implementation guide. It is in the docs directory of every Keystroke installation. It will also, there's a checkbox to display it when you install Keystroke, and that checkbox will be selected when it gets updated automatically. So if it's ever updated, it should pop up for you as well. The other thing is there is a Nettie Pay implementation guide and a Genius implementation guide. So if you're using the ISC 250 or the VX805 with EMV, then you would fall under the implementation guide for Nettie Pay. If you're doing the Genius, then you fall under the implementation guide of the Genius. And if you bear with me, let's see if I can get these up on the screen here. So here in a second is the Keystroke PA-DSS implementation guide for Keystroke. And you see right at, I know it's going to probably be kind of small on your screen, but it's for Keystroke POS and the Keystroke payment module. So if you're using Keystroke POS using the payment module, this is the document you follow. any installation, this is a great document to follow. There's lots of information in here on things to do. There are some obscure references in here to things like, according to PA-DSS, you're supposed to have system restore turned off. So you need to have that turned off. It talks about different protocols and hashes and things like that that you need to have turned on and off. And so there's a lot of good information in here. Then if you've ever downloaded the Datacap Nettie Pay, there is an option for documentation there, and this is what it would take you to, is their PA-DSS 3.1 implementation guide. So it's built along the same lines as ours, covers a lot of the same information. So just if you look, you know, it kind of gives you a notice on everything it does and how it's been revised. And so there's lots of good information if you're doing Vantiv with the ISC 250 or VX805 and Nettie Pay. Then there is also a Genius PA-DSS implementation guide. So this, again, you're following if you're using the Genius. Now, where these implementation guides really tie in, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, is the, and if my PowerPoint comes up here in a second, there is a PCI QIR Program, which stands for Qualified Integrator and Reseller, that I think Mercury and RSPA had a program where for $75 you could take the class and take the test. I think it's about $200 normally. So I took the class, took the test. Test was very interesting. I think it was like 60 questions, and you go through it and you hit submit at the end, and then the screen pops up right away. You have passed the test. So I don't know what I got right. I don't know what I got wrong. There were a lot of good questions on there. There are a lot of questions that were kind of about their program that really didn't mean anything. So, but it was interesting to do. And they've set this up basically to help resellers follow the implementation guide. That's pretty much what it's all about. Again, it's how to follow the implementation guide, and you use different implementation guides depending on how you're doing the Keystroke installation. If I go back to my Acrobat, I have an example here of the kind of official form that this is the QIR implementation statement. So it's when you do an installation, you're supposed to fill this out. It's implementation statement, customer detail, who the QIR is, and then at the bottom, let's see if that gets displayed there, is the PA-DSS validated payment application. So it's how you're installing that. And then there's a bunch of details and a bunch of statement details. How you, did you use unique passwords? Is remote access available? Are you going to do more remote access? So there's lots of questions in here, but it's not a huge document. It's not that difficult to fill out. I am not here advocating that everybody should become a QIR or that it is something you're going to do. It's kind of a weird program because I don't really know what it does. They have, I think Visa said by, I think it's April 2017, they wanted all payment applications installed by a QIR, and I just don't see it happening. I don't see any reason. I've become a QIR. Nobody's called me and asked me to do anything. It's not like it really helped my business or changed the way I run things. So we'll see how this program shakes out. But it is tied to the implementation guides. And that was pretty much what I wanted to get at today is some overview of the PCI program and EMV and how they're related and not related. And just remember, what we are trying to do here is protect you, the reseller, protect the data of the customer, avoid having a breach, chargebacks, you know, any kind of penalty handed down by the card brands. It's really kind of a crazy business, but it's all about security. And the best ways to do that are EMV, and the EMV devices are end-to-end encrypted. So that means keystroke never touches the data. The data goes right from the device to the processor. So that's more secure. The merchant isn't really having any data that could be lost. There could be skimming or man-in-the-middle attacks that could be susceptible for, but it's still, there's not going to be loss of, oh, here's 20,000 credit cards from the past 6 months that got collected and breached from data files or anything. So we're really talking about security and awareness for the customer. So it's good to be an advocate to people saying, hey, it's good to understand security. It's good to understand credit card security. And if you don't want to do all the PCI rigmarole, I understand that. But hey, take a look at these end-to-end encrypted devices, because that's really going to make you secure. So we'll see how it all shakes out in the next couple of years here. Keystroke is PA-DSS validated through the end of 2019, so we got a couple of years before we have to do it again. But with that, I will open it up to any questions. And I'm sure there's lots of questions. It's just hard to know even what to ask. The RSPA show, if you go there, you know, you can find out the retail now that is August 1st and 2nd, you can find out a whole lot about PCI, EMV, all the things that are going on. And then also we're having our dealer summit. So if you haven't signed up, that's the 30th and the 31st of July in Dallas. So thank you very much for attending today. And next week is Tech Tips with Mike Tabor. We've kind of given him the last Friday of the month to review what changes that have happened in Keystroke and stuff we've learned on the front lines of tech support. So have a great week.